If you're going to understand what Puritan literature is, you need to know a thing or two about Puritanism. Both rose to popularity in the 17th century in the New England area of the United States. Puritanism, as a religious movement, believed in cleansing the church of all of its remaining Roman Catholic ties. Its followers, dubbed Puritans, lived by a moral and religious code meant to influence their own lives as well as impact the lives of everyone around them. Even today, one of the simplest ways to impact the lives of people around the world is through the written word. Puritans understood that and undertook it with a goal of honoring God and the Bible through their work. Not surprisingly, authors of Puritan literature were deeply religious and wrote in such a way to make God become easier for everyone to understand and more relevant in their day-to-day lives. But what else characterized Puritan literature? Plenty. Let's take a look at some of the central characteristics of this literary movement. Puritan literature was direct and focused on offering instruction from a biblical point of view. However, there were many other central characteristics. Let's take a look at some of them. Puritan literature relied on a first-person narrative. Puritan authors approached writing from a personal point of view, with many of their writings coming in the form of journals, diaries, and day-to-day experiences. By writing from a first-person perspective, thoughts are conveyed from the author speaking about him or herself. Puritan literature relied on a religious rather than an entertainment theme. Puritans didn't believe in writing for entertainment. Rather, they thought of writing as a tool to reach people with the story of God. Works focused on realistic messages, illustrating the idea that everyone was born a sinner and that his or her salvation had been predetermined, a concept known as predestination. Puritan literature also relied on specific genres. Taking into account the first-person narrative and religious focus, most Puritan literature took the form of a sermon, poem, letter, or historical narrative. There was often an underlying purpose to these types of communications, illustrating their values and the importance of the Bible and God in their daily lives. Puritan literature relied on a simple style of writing as well. Puritans lived simple lives, so it stands to reason that their style of writing would mimic the same pattern. Puritan authors used direct and simple language and sentence structure to convey their point, shunning the more elaborate style of writing that was popular in many circles at the time. Puritan literature relied on biblical allusions. Biblical allusions, or references to biblical events or characters, were used heavily in Puritan writing. Many authors would compare themselves or current struggles to hardships endured by characters illustrated in the Bible. Puritan literature also relied on fear. In many works, authors relied on their readers' sense of fear about God and hell to effect change in their readers' minds and souls. By using fear to reach the readers, many authors thought that there was a better potential for change. After all, sinners who didn't conform to their religious beliefs were believed to be headed for an eternity of torment in hell. There were many important Puritan authors. Some of the more well-known include John Milton, Anne Bradstreet, Cotton Mather, and William Bradford. John Milton is most famous for his poem Paradise Lost. The 10-volume work recounts the story of Adam and Eve's sin and how they were cast out of the Garden of Eden. An English author, Milton dictated his great work after blindness took his sight. He was also known for writing political pamphlets advocating the abolition of the Church of England. Anne Bradstreet was educated by her father and the first female poet to achieve literary acclaim in the New World. Her book of poetry, The 10th Muse Lately Sprung Up in America, was secretly published by her brother-in-law. Her early work, Upon a Fit of Sickness, written when she was 19, is an example of traditional Puritan writing focusing on life, death, and salvation. Cotton Mather was a minister who wrote Pillars of Salt and the Biblia Americana. Mather's work focused primarily on biographies and historical accounts. He also served as an advisor to judges during the infamous Salem witch trials. Mather had 382 works published during his lifetime, including essays, poems, and sermons. He believed, like other Puritan writers of the time, that writing was a method of teaching. William Bradford helped form Plymouth Colony in Massachusetts after arriving in the New World aboard the Mayflower. His writing, most notably of Plymouth Plantation, offered an account of settling and setting up the new colony. Let's review. Puritanism was a religious movement toward cleansing the church of its Catholic ties that had a profound effect on 17th century writing. Authors of the period were characterized by first-person work that were heavy on simplistic language and sentence structure, as well as religious references and biblical allusions. Many Puritan authors relied on writing as a form of teaching religious submission, sometimes through instilling fear in their readers. Some of the more important writers of the time include a leader in the New World, William Bradford, the first female poet to achieve acclaim in the Americas, Anne Bradstreet, the author of Paradise Lost, John Milton, and Cotton Mather, an advisor to judges during the Salem witch trials.